Rube, I'm a little sad. This is our final daily podcast at Radio Row together.
Well, that's really sad.
Yeah, it's like the end of a 5-month-long adventure we've been on here.
Well, we won't stop doing podcasts. We just won't be in this lovely room.
I'll be here.
You'll be here. But, we'll be at a Super Bowl probably next year in Santa Clara, so there'll be more Radio Row podcasts to come.
That's a lot of fun. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We are getting closer to the Super Bowl here, Super Bowl 59. This is the last day on Thursday that we got a chance to talk to players and coaches. So they're excited about that. It's a lot on their plate. It's an hour long each day of just a barrage of questions. It's really different than what they're normally used to. You can't hide in the game room
right
here. So I think they're happy to be done with this part of the week, and now just like it's all football all the time.
Yeah, and I think it was really good that they got back to practice on Wednesday, and a lot of guys were saying how good it felt to be back in a routine with meetings and film study and practice, and just obviously it's still different because you're practicing at the Saints facility and you're still in a hotel and everything's different, but they all said to a man, I talked to about 5 or 6 guys about this, just how good it felt to be on the practice field, running around. They haven't practiced since Saturday, so they all said they had fresh legs. They felt really good. They said the vibe was great. Guys said it felt like a normal practice, which is what Nick's been preaching. Just it's a normal week. Obviously, the stakes are higher. We understand that, but treat it as much as you can like a week back home at the NovaCare. As far as being in a routine and doing the things you usually do, don't make it into something more than it is. It's the Super Bowl, but it's just another football game. And I think that message is getting through.
I think so. But why do they say it to Braden Mann? He said they said to a man. To a Braden Mann?
Ladies and
I'm
gentlemen,
a little
Dave
punch
Zangaro.
drunk, and there's a lot of caffeine right now. I'm doing good, though.
Okay, good.
It's
terrible.
Anything else? And the worst part was I had that joke locked and loaded, and then he went on kind of a long thing there, and I had to just wait for it. And in my head, I'm like, do I still get the joke in? And you knew that I was still going to get the joke in.
A really scary glimpse into the mind of Dave Zangaro.
If you went a little bit longer, I'd have to give it up.
Yeah, I wish I had.
There's one thing I wanted to talk about. Nick Sirianni was asked on Thursday what he's going to do with the team the day before the game. And it's something, Nick always thinks about his messaging. I'm always fascinated by it. He tells me, he walks around his neighborhood thinking about what he's going to say to these guys. And he does, hold things for certain situations. Yeah. But it sounds like he's going back to the well for this one. Back in 2023, I guess it was, the night before the Super Bowl, he basically said, anyone who has something to say it. And it ended up leading this really emotional meeting with his players, and Jason Kelce kind of headlined that, a really emotional Jason Kelce. He's going to do it again. He's going to open the floor most likely and just let whoever has something to say, let them say it.
Yeah, that's like the Quaker wedding. You ever been to a Quaker wedding?
You know what? I think I learned this reference from Super Bowl 57.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's what it's like. You just get up. If you feel so moved, you get up and speak. And yeah, Nick really, I think, has a really good sense of what his team needs to hear and when. And a lot of the days it's him just getting up there and addressing them. But I think he likes having putting in the players' hands. He's got some captains that have been through a lot and been here a long time, and some who it's their first time on a winning team or on a good team. So I think you can kind of figure out who's going to talk, the older guys, the veteran guys.
I asked a few of them, like Brandon Graham said he was, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Slay. They all said that they were going to say something. They don't know what yet. All of them, to a man, said that they weren't going to premeditate anything.
Not going there.
They were just going to whatever comes to them, just say it.
Yeah, and you've got guys in Lane and BG and Slay, the guys you mentioned, who are extremely thoughtful and motivating, and they know exactly what to say at the right moment. So I don't know. I hope we get some glimpses of that from Eagle social media at some point after the game. I would think if they win, we would see excerpts of that.
Well, we saw some from 57 and didn't win that game.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, it's I think it's something Nick's really good at, is understanding what his team needs to hear.
Lane Johnson told me he doesn't think it's going to be as emotional as it was in 57. He said this time he thinks it's going to be more like, we got business to finish in this game. I think that's an interesting glimpse into the differences between this run and the last run.
Yeah.
Like the last run, not that they were happy to get there alone, but I think there's some of that.
There's a dimension to that.
Yeah, and like I think that's natural too. That's not a bad thing. But with so many of these leaders, especially having gone through that, I think there is kind of an extra hunger to get the job done.
Yeah, in this team, there's a much stronger sense of, like, this isn't a great story. We're the best team out there, and it's not like, oh my goodness, we're at the Super Bowl. I mean, they feel like they belong here. They're acting like they belong here, and I think there's a big difference between 22 and that team. Is, I know there were some guys from 17, but it was essentially a new team, and they are not interlopers. They belong here.
They certainly do. Anything else from media today kind of stand out to you? Get any good stuff?
Yeah, I talked to Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell about Slay and what he's meant to them. It was really cool. Just, Quinyon doesn't say much, but he opened up a little bit, and he said Slay's like, my big brother, and whether it's something football or non-football, I can always talk to him. I can call him anytime. And he said, I wouldn't be having the success I'm having if it wasn't for Slay. And Cooper said something very similar. I talked to Christian Parker, the secondary coach, about what it's like having a guy like Slay in the room who's so good with the younger players. And he talked about, I think it's something you wrote a story about a couple years ago, just how important it was to Slay as a young player with the Lions to have the older guys take him under their wing, and he always wanted to be the same guy. And Cooper DeJean said it's just something really healthy on this team. They both brought up Avonte Maddox, who's done the same thing since Cooper took his job, and just how that kind of atmosphere. We talk about the culture of teamwork and everything, and that's all part of it. These are guys, Slay. Avonte Maddox, Cooper DeJean took his job. And Slay knows that these guys are going to take his job at some point, although he's still playing really well. But there's no selfishness in it. It's all, what can I give to these guys? What can I give to the team? And that kind of atmosphere permeates the whole locker room.
Yeah, it does. I did that story before this season, talking to, as Slay called them, his old heads back in Detroit, Glover Quinn, Rasheed Mathis, and it is cool. I love those stories, like the lineage of the NFL. The coolest thing from that story way back in the offseason was that Glover Quinn, the GM back then, asked him, hey, take Slay under your wing. And he said, put his locker next to my locker. And it's very cool. So, Slay saw that, and now he's doing it for these kids. And we've talked about this before, but Slay's kind of a goofy guy, and I think most people don't see his serious side. It's there.
Yeah, and I asked Slay, I had a chance to sneak in at his podium and ask him about those two guys and how much it's meant to him to be able to share his wisdom. And he said, they my kiddies. I got to take care of them. He said, they're going to be great players. And he said, there's going to be a time when they're passing their knowledge down to younger guys. So Troy Vincent, I think I've told this story before, but the first day that Lito and Sheldon were in the locker room as rookies, Troy Vincent talked to them for an hour. He just had this audience with these guys. And I asked him when he was done, I said, what was that all about? And he said, handing down the keys to the kingdom. And that's what it is. And that's what Slay has done really beautifully. And, these guys have been, the Eagles were the first team since the 81 49ers to have two rookie starters at cornerback in a Super Bowl. And without Slay, I just don't know how. I think they'd still be good. I don't think they'd be this good. It's
cool that he views that as a part of his legacy.
Yeah.
It's not just what he did on the field. And we've seen that from this team for years now, especially in some position groups, like the offensive line especially, has been really good at that. Just before we left to come down to New Orleans, Lane Johnson was talking about JP and Todd Herremans and Matt Tobin, Evan Mathis, all the guys that helped him out early on in his career. So it is cool.
Brand Graham's always talking about Trent Cole.
Yeah.
Had a few years with him, and it's just it's a culture that I think comes from the top, and it really helps you win football games because it gets guys better. It's a real thing.
I found something out today that I love. It's one of my favorite nuggets that I've gotten all year.
Oh, I like this one.
Bobby King, the linebackers coach, an intense guy, man of few words, but his linebackers love him. During the defensive meetings this year, he's been playing clips of animals hunting, like lions, tigers, and bears.
Oh, my.
Thank you. He's been playing videos of animals hunting this year, which is such a macho man football guy thing to do, but I kind of like it.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing. I don't find him a man of few words.
In public settings, he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, I love that, and they have that mentality. Let's hunt.
And that's how I figured this out. I was asking guys about the slogan of the playoffs this year, and that's what I found out. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. He also said there's some other weird videos too, but let's stick with the hunting ones.
I found out that Bobby King's brother's a drummer and has a band, so go see him play.
BB King. I told that joke off camera the other day, so I figured
I'm glad you didn't save that one.
Anything else from today's availability?
I don't think so. I talked to Christian Parker about Slay and the rookie.
Had you talked to him before?
No.
He's an impressive guy, isn't he?
He really is.
Yeah. I've talked to him a couple times for different stories, and I've been really impressed. And look, sometimes we shouldn't take too much into how a coach talks to a reporter, but even him explaining things to me, I can see the teacher side of him.
Sure.
And it's not like he's not teaching me how to play a technique or anything, but he's a good communicator and he explains things well.
Yeah, and I found that true about Jamal Singleton yesterday as well. But Christian, he's going to go far in this business. You can just tell he's just got that aura about him, and I think he's terrific at what he's secondary coach. We ended up talking about Avonte Maddox. It was really interesting. He says he's one of his favorite guys he's ever coached.
Wow.
Just because how unselfish he is, how he handled getting demoted, how he's played when he's had to play. And he said he's just the ultimate team guy. And, when he lost his job as the slot during the bye week, he's like, what can I do to help? Well, what can I do to help the team? And what can I prepare for? And it wasn't like, how do I get my job back? Or, what? He's like, how can I help the team? And that's just such a cool thing.
And he very quietly started to climb the safety depth chart. You had Tristan McCollum there, and he was the next guy up. Sidney Brown's kind of been in the mix, but Avonte is now the next safety on the field.
Yes, he is. And, yeah, he thinks a lot of him. He thinks the world of him. It's just cool because you get a perspective that, and we can't talk to Bobby King. We can't talk to Jamal Singleton and Christian Parker during the season. So one of my favorite things to do really Wednesday and Thursday when the position coaches are there, is just sit down and talk to these guys, even if it's not for a story. I was talking to Wash today, Jeremiah Washburn, just talking football for a while. And he was talking, I'm not going to use it in a story because there's not enough days, but he was talking about what clicked for Nolan Smith and just kind of how he turned the corner. And he said, we didn't know. We thought it was going to happen. We didn't know.
You never know.
And he talked about how he took parts of Derek Barnett's game, took parts of Sweat's game, part of BG's game, Hassan Reddick's game. He said he's just such a absorber. It was a really interesting conversation, and man, I just love those conversations. It's one of my favorite things about being at the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Anything else? I think that was all. I talked to, I don't know if I mentioned it on the last pod, but a bunch of the draft class of 2023, just about what it was like entering the building when the team is coming off a Super Bowl loss, and if they could feel that or not. Some of the guys said they could. There was they could tell there was a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth, but they could also still feel the confidence from them, even though they lost the game, that they were still a good team.
Yeah.
Obviously the season didn't end well, but they were a good team last year, at least talent-wise.
They were. They were 10-1 at one point, and it did make the playoffs. But I think you did the same story about the class of 18.
It's kind of the same story, but the opposite. After a Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they won that one?
Very different.
Yeah. Good stuff. But, yeah, it's that period of Super Bowl week is over. There's no more availability. and I'm sure the players are thrilled about it.
Yeah, all football now.
Yeah.
The first injury report of the week came out on Wednesday. We're doing this before the Thursday report comes out. Some really good news, though. Yeah. Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens, both full participants. That means the starting offensive line is going to be healthy in this game.
And that's huge because this offensive line, when they're healthy, is as good as any. One of the best we've ever seen. So I just love that matchup between the Eagles O-line and the Chiefs D-line. Really, the only thing you were concerned about was the health of those two guys. So having them, certainly the bye week is huge, and getting some extra rest and getting them off their feet and getting them healthy. I'm sure they did a lot of rehab and ready to go.
Yeah. So here were the 4 players who were limited to start the practice week: Jalen Carter, Kenny Gainwell, Brandon Graham, Devontae Smith. So Jalen Carter has that illness. I think a few guys are sick. I've seen a few players. It's tough not to get sick in an environment like this, honestly. Yeah. Carter did not show up for media the last 2 days, so I understand why they're keeping him away. I don't know. I mean, we don't know much about the illness, but I think it's like a mild concern that he might not have all the maybe it saps some of his energy because he's been playing over 90% of their snaps.
Yeah, I just kind of think he's going to be fine. I mean, I don't know that. I have no reason to think that, but it's Jalen Carter. He's Superman. He'll be fine.
Okay, there you have it. Dr. Reuben Frank says Jalen Carter will be fine. Kenny Gainwell, the concussion in knee, they can keep him limited until he clears the protocol. He was at media night.
Yeah. Well, he was there today. I talked to him today for a bit.
Okay.
So he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine.
They wouldn't have put him out there if he still had a concussion.
Yeah. I mean, and they wouldn't have put him at opening night where it's like 110 decibels and lights everywhere.
It can cause a concussion.
Yeah. I felt like I was concussed after that. And then Brandon Graham, elbow. We know what he's got going on, the torn triceps. So he's going to play, though, right?
Yeah, I think he's going to play. I was over at his. He was finishing up at the podium, and somebody asked something about his struggles early in his career, and they said, you were called a first-round bust, and he looks over and he says, he was the one who kept writing it. I'm like, PG, it's been 15 years, and I didn't really write that. I've never called anybody a first-round bust until after 2 years, but. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
That is funny. All week he's been slipping and saying that he's playing because he's had to talk so much.
Yeah.
And he can't help himself. And then sometimes he'll catch himself and he'll be like, well, we'll see.
Yeah,
he's playing. Yeah, he's playing. Devontae Smith, the hamstring, he did not practice at all in the extra week.
Right.
He was limited on the first day back. I think that's just them easing him back into things with the soft tissue.
Yeah, and they need him. He's been such a good postseason player. He had a big Super Bowl 2 years ago. I should have mentioned this. One player was talking about going back to practice, and he said, we all feel great. We all have fresh. I'm not going to say who it was. He said, it's almost like we had a bye week. I said, well, he did have a bye week. Oh, yeah. But anyway, yeah, I think Devontae will be all right. They need him.
Yes, certainly they need him. The other guys who were full, Britton Covey, Dallas Goedert, CJ Uzomah, and Zach Bond. He had that groin last week on the injury report. They're all going to be ready to play. We'll see what happens with Britton Covey and CJ Uzomah if they get activated to the 53. I think there's probably a better chance for Uzomah than there is Covey. I think they'll probably be okay with Cooper DeJean. They might not change that.
Yeah, I would think so.
But Uzomah would give them that blocking tight end if they want that instead of E.J. Jenkins, who's kind of more of a receiver.
Right.
That'd be tough for E.J. Jenkins, though, to be the third receiver and then lose your roster spot the day before the Super Bowl.
That's the business.
That is the business. Get into matchups here?
Yeah.
So we did Eagles offense yesterday. We'll get into Eagles defense today. The first one is Vic Fangio against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Now, you've probably heard the stat that Mahomes is 8-0 against Vic Fangio in his career, but you look deeper into that, and that stat really doesn't mean much to me. Yes, he's won those games, but let me tell you the quarterbacks for the Vic Fangio teams in those 8 games. Joe Flacco, Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock, Tua.
Tua
Tagovailoa.
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, it's – I think you do have to look deeper. Half of them were Drew Lock, and, none of those guys – I mean, Flacco won a Super Bowl, but, he's what he is.
A little long in the tooth at that point.
Yeah. Tua's Tua. I really think he's going to have
And the offenses, by the way, in those 8 games, averaged 11.9 points per game.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they were getting no help.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Vic's going to have a good game plan. I think he's going to call a good game, and I think this defense will be ready. This defense is a lot more talented than the other defenses he had that faced Patrick Mahomes. So I think this defense is going to play well.
I do too, and this is actually interesting too. Mahomes' passer rating against Fangio is actually lower than his career.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was
only 117.
Well, no, 95.9 in the
Oh.
Fangio games, 102.1 overall.
Interesting.
Yeah, so like the 8-0, yes, like, he won those games, but I don't think that's as simple as Mahomes has Fangio's number. I don't think that's the case at all.
Yeah. I think they'll be locked and loaded and ready to go. And this defense has had one bad quarter since the Tampa Bay game, and that was the end of the Washington game when Washington beat them. So down in Landover. So I mean, this defense has played so consistently well this year. Other than that one quarter, really last for like 4 drives. So I have a lot of confidence in them. There's no. I look at this defense. There's just no weak link. There's no. Like, all right, we can go after him. We can go after him. Now, Oren Burks isn't the Kobe, but he's played really well. So I think they'll be ready.
What would be your plan against Mahomes? How do you play him? Because Mahomes was saying on Wednesday that every time he's played Fangio, he's done something different to try to stop him. And that's kind of Fangio's MO. He's never going to do the same thing just because that's what he does.
Yeah, I don't think it would be any one thing. I think I wouldn't blitz him.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because in Miami last year, Vic did blitz him quite a bit.
I don't think he will. I don't think he likes blitzing with this team.
He hasn't for the most part, yeah. There have been a few games here and there where it'll spike, but not a ton.
I just think you're asking for trouble if you blitz him. He'll make you pay for it, and I think their best chance to get to him is with the guys up front and just be disciplined. He's just so dangerous when he gets out in the open and starts making stuff up and being creative, and things break down, and he always turns that into a play. So just be disciplined. Don't let him do that as much as possible, and hold your breath for 3 hours.
Yeah, he had 3 scrambles for 48 yards in the last Super Bowl against the Eagles. So
Yeah.
he didn't scramble a ton, but picked up big yardage.
It's weird because he's not fast.
He's shifty and creative getting away.
Yeah, and he's elusive in a way that doesn't rely on pure speed, and he's. He does that pump fake 10 yards past the line of scrimmage, and people fall for it. Hey, what is that? Like, he's not.
My
throwing
favorite
it.
ever was when Jameis kept pumping, and he did it the whole way. Like he picked up a first down, and he just did it the whole way.
Yeah.
But Mahomes off schedule. This is the next stat I have that I really like. Mahomes and Travis Kelce together since 2018. Kelce leads all NFL players in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns on scramble plays. And there's like no easy way to stop that.
No, there's not. But yeah, they just have such a symbiotic connection, and I think Zach Bond was asked about that, like when he starts scrambling and Travis Kelce is like just running around, like how do you defend that? And he's like, just don't let him get to that point. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, and look, there are going to be some plays in this game where it does become a scramble drill, and yeah, I think you have to know that going in, because you might have to cover a lot longer than you'd like, ideally. But I do have confidence in the Eagles' ability to stick with, especially the receivers, but even Kelce. Like I think this could be a big C.J. Gardner-Johnson day in coverage, which there have been times this year where he hasn't been great in coverage, but I mean, this is a big moment for him.
It really is. They're going to need him. They're going to need all of them.
And I think we made the point earlier in the week that like the Zach Ertz big game against the Eagles defense, it doesn't like strike a ton of fear in me that Travis Kelce is going to be able to do that too, because I think when you look at this Chiefs offense, like that has to be the priority, is stopping him. It doesn't mean you're going to win. Like, he didn't have a big game in the AFC Championship game, but that's got to be where you start.
Also, a lot of those Ertz catches were when they were down 30 points, 24 points, whatever. So, yeah, I mean, the Chiefs don't have a ton of ways to. I mean, they do what they do, and they do it really well. I mean, they don't have great outside receivers, and it's Kelsey, and it's running the ball, and it's Mahomes just making stuff up.
Xavier Worthy, their rookie receiver, had a nice rookie season.
Yeah.
Is second on the team in the postseason receiving. He's going to line up quite a bit inside, so that matchup against Cooper DeJean is going to be fun.
Excuse me. Yeah, and Cooper's been so good, and when they drafted him, I'm thinking he'll play the slot this year and then move outside when Slay retires or whatever happens with Slay. I mean, I want to keep him in the slot. I just think he's so good, has such a good feel for it, and so savvy, and I like the matchup.
Yeah, I would never move him.
Never move him.
Yeah, unless you need him. Like maybe you get in a situation where you don't have an outside corner, like kind of what the Chiefs are going through. Honestly, with McDuffie,
yeah.
Like he needed to step up. He's their best corner, so you need him on the field at all times. I could see maybe in the future that happens, but you have Quinyon Mitchell too. He's going to be your number one corner for a long time.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with the other corners like Isaiah. I had a nice chat with Isaiah today. He just had a big grin on his face. I asked him what he was doing a year ago this week. He was like not playing football. But yeah.
To be fair, most people weren't.
Well, not specifically this week, but yeah. So yeah, I have ultimate faith in Cooper, and it's just another game for him.
Yeah, and it's not like Mahomes has crazy great receivers. He has DeAndre Hopkins at the tail end. He has Hollywood, right? Like no one's going to really strike fear into you a ton. But you have the quarterback, they get him the ball, and he figures out ways to do it all the time.
He does. And sometimes you watch that team win, and you're like, I don't know how they just did that. They're not that good, but they just keep winning.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just confidence. Like, they're confident in the quarterback, they're confident in the coach, and if they keep a game close, that they think they're going to win. That goes so far.
Yeah, and they do.
Yeah, most of the time they do. The last one I have here is just the second last one. The Eagles' defensive line against that offensive line. It's a good offensive line. Not a surprise that Andy Reid has a pretty good line. It's not as good as the Eagles' line, but I like Nolan Smith's matchup against Juwan Taylor, who's already started to move at the snap right now. I think Nolan Smith is going to make a big play in this game.
Yeah, nobody's ever had a sack in 4 postseason games. He's got a chance to do that.
Consecutive?
4 consecutive, the same season. I mean, obviously, you'd have to be on a wild card team that reaches the Super Bowl to do that.
Yeah.
But that happens more than you think. There's been a lot of wild card teams that have made it this far. He's just been so lights out and playing. He's so confident right now. He's really hard to stop, and he's going to get a sack. He's going to get a sack at some point.
Yeah, I like his chances.
Yeah.
So you have this Chiefs offensive line. You have Joe Thuney at left tackle now. Played left guard for a really long time and had been playing left guard this season, but their left tackle situation was kind of a mess. So they move him outside, and he's played really well, but it's left them weaker now inside. So you have Trey Smith at right guard, and now you have Mike Caliendo.
Guy just walks up and throws something in the trash behind us. And he just leaves. Anyway, I thought that was rude.
You have, if we can get back to the podcast here, you have Trey Smith at right guard, and you have Caliendo at left guard. Yeah. Creed Humphrey's obviously excellent. He's the best center in football right now.
Yeah.
So it's a tough line. Caliendo's the weak link.
Yeah, and
who's really nice, by the way. I chatted with him the other day, but he is the weak link of this offensive line.
Yeah, it's again. I think the Eagles are stronger on both lines, and they just. I mean, obviously having a healthy Jalen Carter is huge. If we'll see how he is and what they get out of him, but yeah, I just really like the way this D-line is playing, and I just think they got better as the year went on, and these 3 games in the postseason, they've been terrific.
Fun number for you here. Since the offensive line switch in Week 15, the Chiefs' interior offensive line, a pressure rate of 9%. Before that switch, 5.1%. So they went from the 4th best to the 4th worst based on that switch.
Yeah, that's a really encouraging number, and I just think the Eagles are going to get some good pressure Sunday.
Then the last one, look, it's not that the Chiefs have a dynamic run game, but you still got to tackle Kareem Hunt. He'll force you to miss some tackles. He's a big, bruising runner. So no matter who you play, you want to make them one-dimensional or as one-dimensional as you can. So you have to plan for that, and you have to try to figure that out.
Yeah, and they have Pacheco's healthy now, and he had a big game 2 years ago in the Super Bowl. Eagles have been good against the run. Not great, good enough. Look, the running game really hurt the Eagles 2 years ago in that Super Bowl, and we'll see what they do, but it's going to be big to stop their running game.
It will be. Anything else I missed there?
I think you covered it all.
Yeah.
There was a moment where I was kind of distracted by the guy from.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that?
Don't do that. All right, let's take a little break. I'll let Rube calm down, and we'll answer a bunch of questions on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and nissanusa.com today.
All right, we're back on the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. Reuben Frank, Dave Zangaro here in New Orleans. Rube, let's get the questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. If you have a question for us, eagle-eye at nbcuni.com. That's nbcuni.com. First one up here is from Bo. Hi, Reuben Dave. What would you say is the biggest advantage this Eagles team has over the Chiefs that they didn't have in their first matchup in 2022? What's a weakness that was formerly a strength? So both sides of the coin there.
Interesting. I think the biggest strength they have is a playable field.
Okay.
Because that was a huge thing out there in Glendale, and that was not, the Eagles' strength that year was their pass rush, and that field neutralized it. And I just think that was, I don't know if they would have won, but they would have had a better chance. Well, obviously they lost, so they would have had a better chance. But I think the field was unplayable, and it was embarrassing for the league, and it neutralized the Eagles' biggest strength.
That's a good one. I'm going to say Vic Fangio. I feel like I've been taking shots at Jonathan Gannon, but you watched that game back, and it was not a good game for him. He did not adjust, and they were able to do whatever they wanted in the second half. I have more confidence that Vic Fangio is going to push the right buttons and pull the right levers to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yep.
How about the inverse?
Jake Elliott. It's a different Jake Elliott than 2 years ago, and 2 years ago, you just felt like he was going to, and last year, most of his career, you felt like he was going to make every kick. It wasn't even a question. And now, we're all holding our breath when he's kicking extra points, 30-yard field goals, whatever it is. So it's a concern, and it's one that used to be a strength.
Yeah, that's probably the best one we have. I'm going to say the pass rush. I know that it was neutralized in the Super Bowl, but just in terms of having that Hassan Reddick type player who was great in those playoffs before the field neutralized him.
Yeah.
Look, Nolan Smith's been great, but I don't think overall this pass rush has been as good as it was in 22. Their secondary is way better, but their pass rush isn't as strong.
Right. I was talking to Jeremiah Washburn about the 70 sacks 2 years ago, and we were laughing about how the last one, the one that gave him 70, was by Zach McPherson.
Yeah.
And, there's a photo of everybody on that team who had a sack, one of the 70 sacks, and Zach's in the front row.
Yeah, because he didn't want to be a part of that, I think, and they all pulled him in there.
Yeah, that's true. So, but that's a good one. Yeah, good question.
Next one, I like that question. Next one from Randy. Hi, Reuben Dave, one of the many avid female listeners who looks forward to your pods.
Thank you.
My question is, it seems like Jalen, who I'm a big fan of, approaches all questions from reporters with unnecessary suspicion. What do you think? Keep up the great work.
It is what it is. I don't know if it's suspicion. I just think he doesn't enjoy it, and he doesn't want to share much, which is his prerogative. And it's, and sometimes he's really insightful. There was a day 3-4 weeks ago where he was up on the podium and he was really insightful and, chatty almost. But usually, I don't know if it's suspicion. I don't know what it is. He just doesn't enjoy it.
I think sometimes he tries to figure out what you're getting at. There's some ulterior motive, and sometimes there maybe is. I think, but he's so polished in that way that he's not going to say anything that's going to make a headline. And I don't think that's a bad trait to have. It can be frustrating for us sometimes, but I get it.
Yeah, I think he likes to keep the main thing the main thing.
Did you just come up with that?
It is original.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
What did he say today? He said, I don't walk through the fire just to smell the smoke.
He's used that one before.
Has he used that one?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Jack, hello, gentlemen. I
The
hope
Book of Jalen.
Nollins is treating you both well. My question comes as I'm listening to another podcast, and the topic is knowing your place in fandom, sparked from new Chiefs fans really needing to appreciate what they have now and not taking it for granted. This got me thinking about my place in Eagles fandom. I am 31 and really started to take in the Eagles by the age of 6 in 1999, the Andy years. I feel fortunate to grow up with such amazing players like Dawkins, Trotter, McNabb, and Owens, and the success they had in my early years. However, a part of me is happy that the Super Bowl came when I was a grown adult, fully understanding the weight of it being the first in franchise history. Not only that, but I was holding my son, who was less than a month old at the time. I can't imagine it being more special. He is 7 now and seeing the Eagles in a similar position when I was in his age. My question is, what do you think would have been the best time to be born into Eagles fandom to experience it at its fullest? Thanks for reading, and go Birds.
Wow. I mean, I don't really know how to answer that.
I think if you're 31 and you went through it, I think that's like the perfect age, because you got close and you got to experience the winning team, but you never got to like get over the hump. And then you finally do, and you get to feel the elation behind it. I think that's cool.
Okay. But I mean, I think to really be an Eagles fan, a real true Eagles fan, you've had to experience significant losses, like years and years of losses. Well, I don't think people that didn't go through like Kotite and just some of the the really bad years. I mean, they were bad for quite a while. I don't know if you didn't go through that. Can you really appreciate this?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
It's a good question. Next one is from Neil. Hey, Dave and Rube. Afternoon from Malaga, Spain. Been an Eagles fan for some 10 plus years now, and this has been the greatest stretch in recent memory. Really enjoy the podcast and the chemistry between yourself and Rube. So many insight and level-headed analysis. My question is this. Leading into the Super Bowl, after watching KC the past few games, do you think Andy will call Vic's bluff and throw over the top? They have 2 speedsters, and the talk is about how they continuously dink and dunk and avoid negative plays. How do you think the Eagles secondary matches up against the Chiefs receivers, and will the game just come down to getting to Patrick Mahomes?
There's a lot there. I think Andy will test them down the field.
I do too, and it's something we probably haven't talked about enough. Some teams started to test Quinyon a little bit late in the season.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't get the ball thrown at him for like weeks and weeks and weeks, but teams started to throw at him a little bit. And Jaden Daniels wasn't afraid to.
No, he wasn't. He's not afraid to throw against anybody. And yeah, he got beat a couple times. He gave up a touchdown, his first one. Overall, he's been tremendous. But knowing Andy Reid, I would think he would if he sees young corners out there, he'll test them.
Yeah, I think he will.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that goes. I think the Eagles are going to play their brand of football for the most part. Like, they're going to try to eliminate those explosives. But, yeah, I think that's a fun matchup to watch.
Yeah.
Next one is from Cole. Hey, fellas. Cole from Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. Thanks for making my commute to work an absolute joy. Monday morning cup of joe and listening to you guys break down a Birds win is absolutely delightful. Now, hear me out.
Oh, here we go.
You got to get on this ride with us, Rube. From my limited knowledge of Taylor Swift, my understanding is that she's done her best work after a breakup, a.k.a. a heartbreak. Could the heartbreak of a Super Bowl loss lead her to dropping an album that rockets to the top of the charts? The NFL will be right at the center of this album. Imagine the eyes. This is what they want, right? Could this potentially have the NFL neutralize or even tilt the referees in the Eagles' direction? Thought I'd drop my theory to ease my fellow fans' worries about the Zebras impacting this game. Have a great time in NOLA.
No.
You don't like that theory?
No.
Not going to entertain that theory?
No.
Okay.
Are you?
I like to have some fun.
I don't.
This is a no fun zone. We're going to get back to the football. Next question, Len. What is the latest?
You have a favorite Taylor Swift song?
Yeah, we're not going to have fun, and then he asked me my favorite Taylor Swift song.
Well, you kind of
bullied you into doing this?
pretty much.
Okay. Lavender Haze, you know that one?
No, Von Hayes.
It's actually
Charlie
about Von
Hayes.
Hayes, yeah.
Charlie Hayes.
Do you?
Yeah, the Alcott, which is it's actually a song by the National. I think it's the National and her collaborating, and it's a great song, great piano. I'd like to accompany her on it at one of her concerts.
Want me to ask Travis for you?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna ask Jason to kind of step in. And,
Okay.
Yeah, the
Good.
Alcott.
From Len,
Brett Desner.
what is the latest on Kellen Moore regarding the head coaching job in New Orleans, and who are the leading candidates to replace him?
Yeah, I think he's got the job.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason they haven't hired anyone yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Kevin Patullo's kind of become the hot name which I would be fine with, just because, Jalen's had so many play callers. This will be a sixth, whoever replaces Kellen, in 6 years. And I just like the fact that Patullo will give him some continuity, a voice he's heard before, somebody he's known for 4 years, somebody he's comfortable with. I think that's going to be important with this hire. There's some good outside candidates, but I just think it makes sense to bring someone in this time who's from the inside.
I'm a little more skeptical, I think, than you. Because I watched this offense get so stale that they had to go and bring someone else in. And, I think Nick does know offensive football. I don't think he's like a dunce when it comes to offensive football, but what he was doing wasn't really working by the end of 23, and I think there's a legitimate worry that this gets them back to what they were, kind of a stale offense that relied too heavily on their players being great and not creating for them. Which, I don't think the Kellen Moore thing has gone as well as you wanted it to either.
Yeah, Patullo's not Brian Johnson. He's not Nick, and I would think he'd bring in some twists and some new ideas. I don't know that.
I don't know if he would. Yeah, I think I hope they at least cast a wide net and try to do a little fact finding and see what you can learn about some of these candidates and how they would approach these players. You bring in you bring in a Bobby Slowick and you interview him and you say, well, how would you maximize A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith? Even if you don't hire them, that's good knowledge to have.
Sure. How much would you involve Jalen in that decision?
You'd want to hear his opinion.
I think it's important.
You don't let him decide it, but
right.
Of course you have to at least ask him.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially if you're thinking about promoting from within. You got to make sure he's on board with that.
Yeah, no doubt.
You want to do a couple more?
Yeah.
Next one is from Bob. Hey, Dave and Rube, longtime pod listener in Harrisonburg, Virginia, by way of Boyertown, Pennsylvania.
I like Boyertown.
They
have that American Legion World Series there. You ever been out there?
I haven't.
Yeah, good baseball.
Okay. Am I overly concerned about A-gap blitzes? Cam Jurgens missed an assignment against the Rams that led to a safety. Frankie Louvu also crushed the A-gap and sacked Jalen in the NFC Championship game. Beyond the obvious threat of a sack or forced fumble, I'm worried these blitzes give linebackers free runs on Saquon when he stands in the block. Those are probably the hardest hits he takes all game.
Yeah, we don't know how close those two guys are going to be at 100%, and obviously if they're significantly below 100%, it's going to be tougher for them to make those blocks. I don't think it's going to be a free open season on Jalen up the middle. So something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think so. They've done pretty well against these blitzes for the most part. When the defense is man coverage, Jalen will take that and he'll throw it away. He'll give his receiver a chance.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think he hesitates in zone because he's worried that he's not seeing it right and that he's going to get picked off. And it's a tough thing because you don't want him to take those sacks, but you also definitely don't want him to throw a pick. So I see both sides of that.
Yeah. One interception for Jalen in his last 338 pass attempts.
There was also a second question from Bob.
Okay.
We have Skinny Batman, Swole Batman, Fat Batman. That was Jason Kelsey, I think. If Rube is Stats Batman, What's
Batman.
Dave's Batman adjective?
Ooh.
I don't think I can be a part of naming myself, so.
I don't. Something to do with Taylor Swift, probably, like Taylor Batman.
I don't like that. Can we workshop that a little bit?
We'll come up with something by tomorrow.
All right, last one from Danny. What's the more likely scenario? A squeak-by win like what we saw against the Rams, or a blowout like we saw against Washington? I hate to get ahead of ourselves, but if we could blow out a team that was way more explosive and high-scoring like Washington, then why can't we do it to a team that had a rough time scoring 30 all year and every game came down to the last minute?
Yeah, there used to be, the Super Bowl used to be a blowout every year, like, those 55-10, but I just don't see that happening. I think these are really well-coached teams. They're both sound teams. They both have good defenses. I just don't see this being a 45-10 game either way.
But I do think if that were to happen, I think it's more likely to be in the Eagles' favor.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know if the Chiefs have.
I don't think they have the firepower.
The firepower to put up that many points on the Eagles.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely it'll be a blowout, but if it is, I think the Eagles win it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for the questions. If you have one for us, that's eagle-eye at NBCUni, NBCUNI.com.
I'm gonna go find that guy.
That's all.
That trash guy.
For today. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast and you've enjoyed the pods all week, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. I'm not going to ask Roop for any final words because I'm scared about what he would say. That'll do it for this edition of the Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan.